Good morning, folks. Good morning. Good morning. I hope you're all right, everybody. And oi, oi, people and hi, gang. It's Andrew Jenkins, and this is a short countdown. I've got the wrong scene. This is a short countdown timer to help the various feeds catch up and settle down, folks. And we're hanging out with the awesome Katie Maycock, founder of Get Your SHIT Together. And and our theme is igniting resilience, burnout prevention strategies for business leaders, folks. So yeah, there we are. So we're just waiting for the feed to come up. Give us a quick wave, Katie.
Hi.
Yeah. Hey, brilliant. And we got Mrs. Moderator herself, Sarah Jenkins, FD of PDX Consulting. Say a quick hello, Sarah.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, good morning. There we go. Right, so there we go. And we've got 124th show, folks, today. Whippy. And I'm just waiting for the feed to come up. Where's the feed? Come on, baby. Oh, it looks like we've got the feed. Oh, tap to join. Here we go. Well, I'm on. And there's a few others on as well. So there we go. Yeah, almost the end of 2 months of January, folks. Yippee. Almost the 1st of February on Thursday. Yeah, 2 months of January out the way. All that horrible lack of daylight stuff and all that. So there we go. So with Sarah, Katie, me, Healthy Minds Club, our sponsors. That's today's team, folks. Wow. And there we go. Wow, wow, bow. Here we are. Here's our sponsorship video. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. Oi, oi, people and hi, gang. It's Leaders Live showtime, folks. And I hope it's going to be a corker today. We've got lots going on with Katie today, and she's just recovered from COVID, poor girl. So there we go. Yeah, it's going around, folks. It's going around. So it's hurrah and huzzah this morning. I've been laughing at my own jokes again, and there we go. And it's just after 8:45 a.m. here in the UK, folks. And we are live with Leaders Live, spreading the love, folks, spreading the love, yabba dabba do. So hope you enjoyed the groovy opener intro, gang, as well. And this week we're delighted that we're being powered by Healthy Minds Club, an appropriate sponsor for what we're talking about this week. And yeah, look out for who's sponsoring us each week. And please let us know if our audio's coming through okay too. And join in with a conversation as well, folks, so we know that you can all get on. And so we're just wondering whether the LinkedIn feed is working, because we're not seeing many of you commenting at the moment. So please comment when you're on. And if you're new to Leaders Live, a warm welcome to you. And Leaders Live is a dynamic weekly talk show that generates business through networking, through community, and through extraordinary conversations that inspire. And as I mentioned in the countdown, I'm Andrew Jenkins, and I host this interactive weekly Leaders Live show that's built an awesome community of people just like yourselves, of like-minded leaders. So there we go. So please don't be shy. We'd love you to introduce yourself, join in, interact with the comments, chat, ask questions as we go along. That's what we're here for. And we've got just 3 simple rules: a safe community, mutual respect, and please no selling in the room. There we go. And our motto is I to the power of we. And there we go. And a really easy way that you can show support for this free show and all the time and effort that we put into producing the show, we do put a lot into it, is you can use a little app called buymeacoffee.com/leaders live. Buy me $5, you get a free half-hour coaching session. It looks a bit like this, folks, if I can do a quick test for you. Bit of fun. There we go. So you can buy me a coffee, and there it goes. And all proceeds go back into the show, folks. So there we are. And you get a shout out too. And what's not to love about that? And so there we go. And smash those likes too, please, folks. We really appreciate that. That gets motivated. Love that bell. So few, put it all together. What have you got? You've got it. Bibbidi, bibbidi, bobbidi, boo. And you'll be singing that song all day. And it's great to see so many users now coming on. So let's bring on our hangout guest for this week. How are you doing, Katie Maycock?
I am doing so well this morning. I'm feeling loads better, unlike last week. I do know I sound a little nasally still, but I'm on the upwards from COVID.
I'm on the upwards from COVID. Yeah, nasty thing, isn't it? Still, so but you went too bad, I think. Were you, Katie? Is that right?
No, I wasn't too bad. I actually was able to truck through it, but still takes its toll, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually last week, I think Jane was just recovering as well. Jane Vincent, who we had on. So it's going around, folks, as they say.
Yeah.
But glad to hear that you're better and and all of that. So, this week's hangout guest, Katie Maycock, founder of Get Your SHIT Together, Get Your Shit Together, technical term that is. And our theme is igniting resilience, burnout prevention strategies for you as business leaders. So, Katie, just tell us a brief bit about your business and where we're heading today, Katie.
So I launched Get Your Shit Together in 2018. So just before all of the burnout and COVID and all of that here. And essentially the reason why I, launched Get Your Shit Together was I've personally burnt out 2 times, been very close the third time.
Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't the only person. And then looking at sort of where the business has taken me, a really big issue that I'm seeing, especially in 2024, is really, really burnt out leaders.
Really?
So the whole purpose of Get Your Shit Together, I've actually got 2 businesses now. I'll explain that in a sec. But the whole purpose of both of the businesses is to create rock solid wellbeing strategies for companies and individuals so people can rock up as the best versions of themselves, whether that's at work or at home.
Yeah, we're big fans of that on this show. Yeah, and the second business?
So the second business is Gist. So fun fact, just going to be really honest, a lot of corporate companies don't like the word shit in my name. So I
put an asterisk in instead, did you?
I rebranded this year and I've launched. So I've got Get Your Shit Together, which is now going to be more of a membership site and focusing on coaching, one-on-one coaching. And then I've got Gist, which is very much that for corporate companies that don't like me to say the word shit, so I can say gist. I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an acronym of Get Your Shit Together. So for me, I feel like it's cheeky and funny, but yeah.
I like it. I like cheeky and funny. So there we go. And I'm sure people think that's a great name. I think there's something in the comments there. We'll come to Sarah in a moment. So thank you, Katie. Where are we heading today? So tell us where are we going? Where are we going?
So something that I really, when you came and asked me what I wanted to talk about, something that I keep getting from companies is, can you come in and do a talk on how our leaders can spot burnout within their team? And I'm like, that's amazing. Why don't we actually talk about the biggest problem is that your leaders are probably extremely burnt out. For the last 3 to 4 years, they've been focusing on making sure their teams don't burn out, but there's been no focus on them. Now, something that I have seen time and time again, if you have a burnt out leader, your team is more likely to not get the support they need. They're not going to get that interaction they need. There's going to be a drop in engagement, and they're most likely going to be burnt out themselves as well. Yeah. For whatever reason, we pop leaders on a pedestal and forget that they are also human. So what I want to talk a little bit about today is actually supporting the leader so they can actually, the whole oxygen mask thing where it's, you got to put your own oxygen mask on before you can support other people. So that's essentially what I want to talk about today, to help leaders understand what does burnout look for them, what they need to be focusing on, and what things they can implement on a day-to-day basis to make sure that they don't fall down, the traps of burnout.
Don't fall down the rabbit hole of the trap of burnout. And also it all filters down, folks. So brilliant. Thank you. And so we've got an audience question as well for this morning to get you guys. There's lots going on the feed, which is great. Thank you for introducing yourselves, all of you, this morning. That's really great. So we do an audience question just to kind of get the interaction going in the show, because this is, funny enough, it's an interactive show. So we want to get your views as well, folks. So today we're going to delve into the realm of leadership, resilience and burnout prevention, as Katie's just said. And we want to hear from you too. And here's our question. What's one challenge you've faced in maintaining your own resilience as a leader? And how did you overcome it? So what's one challenge you've faced is maintaining your own resilience as a leader, and how did you overcome it? Question is in the feed, folks, if the feed is catching up with you. So share your experiences and let's ignite this conversation that fuels inspiration and solution. Did you like the link there with fuels and ignite? There we go. So it takes a little bit of time for the feed to catch up because there's a delay in the feed. Let's bring Mrs. Moderator in the meantime. Hello, Mrs. Moderator, Sarah Jenkins.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, the feed's a bit quirky this morning.
Quirky. So. We've noticed LinkedIn's quirky, haven't we?
They're not all coming up. So if I don't say good morning to you, please don't take it personally. Nice to see Maria on.
Hello,
Gary,
Maria.
Good morning. That's
hello,
the name
Gary.
I've before.
Matthias,
and let's have a look. Stuart is in foggy Prague.
Hi, Stu. How you doing?
comes out later for you. Lots of love for the acronym.
Yeah, there you go. Thought there would be. Yeah,
That's great. We like that one.
we like
So,
the.
yeah, all we need is some comments, please, folks. Don't make me lonely in the feed.
Yeah. Don't make Sarah lonely. She gets very upset if you keep her lonely. Okay, so we'll come back to the feed question in a moment. Katie, a question for you. Let's kick off while we're waiting. So, Katie, as a business founder of Get Your Shit Together, what inspired you, Katie, to focus on burnout prevention? And you've talked a little bit about that. How is this becoming more critical, as you mentioned, in 2024? Because you kind of just alluded to those in your build-up. So tell us a bit more about that, Katie.
So I think there's a massive. So when I look back and I think about my journey and I think about how I burnt out, there was so much that led to that point. And I remember thinking back, when I was in my early 20s, and this is how I burnt out. And if I go back even further, I just created a foundation where I would put myself in high pressure situations and like for 100% of the time, and then never take the foot off the gas and wondered why I was getting physically unwell, why I was, struggling to think clearly, why I was, struggling with anxiety and things like that. And as I sort of like progressed through my own journey of understanding, what, I really need to manage my own stress. And how I got to that point was, like I said before, I burnt out 2 times. The second time was horrific. So I woke up one day. It got so much worse that I woke up one day and I had a cold sore that literally started from the bottom of my lip that went down to my jawline, up my jawline, around my ear.
Gosh.
And that was the moment that I realized I really don't have a good relationship with stress. I had used stress as a fuel to be successful. And the dilemma with that was I was actually very successful. However, my body was taking a massive toll. Actually, my whole physical, mental, and emotional well-being was taking a massive, massive toll. So what people could see was this giant cold sore. But what people couldn't see was the fact that I wasn't able to engage in conversations appropriately. So I would go to a business meeting, I could see people's mouths moving, I could hear noises, but I could never transform that information into anything meaningful. I'd walk out of a meeting going, I have no idea what I've agreed to do. I have no idea what that meeting was for. Same thing with emails. I was also really struggling to digest food. I had inflammation riddled through my body. I was 27 years old. And I could barely walk up and down stairs because my joints were so inflamed.
Gosh.
I was also struggling with anxiety that nobody knew about, but I was having panic attacks near daily just to catch the train.
Gosh.
So there was so much going on. And in that moment, although it was a very vain thing to look at my face and be like, oh my gosh, I look like Shirin Baratheon from Game of Thrones. In that moment, I was like, I can't be the only person, because I think back, I was never sat down and said, this is what stress is, this is how it makes you feel, and this is how you can deal with it. We never taught that. We kind of just stumble through life. And if we haven't created good belief systems around stress, and we haven't created good, attitudes and ideas around stress, it's going to lead us down a dark path towards burnout. Then I realized I wasn't the only person that did that. So my goal for the last 5 years and for the foreseeable future is to work with people, helping them break down their understanding of stress and create better habits, better behaviors, better thought process, and better beliefs around stress.
I love that. I love the way just to recap some of that, folks. And I think, I love the way that you've just talked very honestly about your own anxiety, about how that affected you physically with your joints. You couldn't even walk downstairs. These are the things that really affect very successful people, who are, trying to do their very best, but they just get caught up in the whole stress thing and they're not aware maybe of what's happening to their body. And this is what you were doing as well. You might be noticing those things in the background, but your bandwidth had been taken up so much by the stress issue, you couldn't even listen to people or focus on the written word or information. So, and I'm sure, those are all signs that, we can pick up, but and there's something about that whole long, dark path you talked about, Katie. I love the way you described that. It's like a long bridge, isn't it? You cross over this bridge, and because it takes so long to cross the bridge, you don't realize that actually every step you're taking is taking you more and more into that dark path of that stress zone. So, yeah, I love the way you described that.
Well, I think that a big thing is to understand is burnout's a destination. There's a journey to get there.
Burnout
Right.
is a destination, folks.
Do not get me wrong, you can go past burnout, and that ain't pretty. Like, you don't want to
No.
get past burnout, but it is a destination. And I think people are like, always want to know, how long does it take to burn out? Like, pretty
Yeah.
much asking me, how long can I live under stress until I get there? And it's like, well, it's going to be really determined on your own resilience, your own physical well-being, on your own systems. And it also depends on how long you've been stressed without knowing.
Of
Right?
course, that self-awareness piece, which you're going to come on to later, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. Let's just catch up with Mrs. Moderator. And before we do that, let's just give you a quick round of applause. I forgot to do that. Hey, there you go. Feel the love, Katie. Feel the
Feel the love. Feeling it.
We've loved the groovy build-up so far. So let's just, Mrs. Moderator, what's going on in the feed? Let's just pick up some stuff for Katie to have a bit of a break.
Yeah, lots of good comments. So Anita, my best choice to overcome burnout was to leave my job. You can't change the attitudes of some colleagues, so it was better to move on. That's a hard decision to take, isn't it?
That's a tough decision to make. But I wonder, Katie, if you're in a toxic environment, I'm just wondering whether that's what Anita's alluding to there. Is it best to walk away? Sometimes it's about you developing resilience, but also there's a point where you have to walk away, right? There's a red line or something.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure Anita didn't just wake up one day and was like, I'm going to leave my job. Like, I'm sure there was a progression to get there.
Indeed.
With toxic environments, I always say that there's a dual responsibility for companies, right?
Like that.
A company has to create an environment where people can do their job appropriately, can thrive, can manage their own stress and manage their own mental health and things like that. That's the responsibility of the organization. Now, as an employee, you can try and change that. You can, talk about that with your manager, HR, and all that kind of stuff. But if nothing changes, you have to put yourself first. There's no point in, metaphorically and literally killing yourself for a job where you're not happy. There's no point. So that is what, people do leave because they're burnt out. And that's something else that companies have to understand. And they have to understand the actual, one thing that I talk about, and I hate talking about it, but it's that bottom line. Burnout costs your business thousands and thousands of pounds. I think it's something like nearly £3,000 per £10,000 of a salary is what's costing you, every single employee that's feeling stressed or burnt out.
Wow.
So and that's a massive amount of money.
So for a 40 grand salary, that's 4 times 3, right? £12,000 every year, right? Okay.
For every employee.
Every employee. Wow. Yeah. On a yearly basis.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. Woof.
Yeah.
That's
you
big.
take that up to 100 people, and they're all stressed and burnt out.
Yeah. And it's all coming from the top, right? So there's a responsibility for you as leaders to think about that, but also to take care of yourself as well.
100%. I mean, you think if you take some of the most toxic leaders that I've met are usually in their own pain. So they're usually going, they're stressed out, they're burnt out. And
Gotcha.
I might be very optimistic and might be a little bit more, empathetic
Sinister
towards that. Yeah. But that doesn't so there's a massive thing when we talk about responsibility and accountability, right? If you're a leader and you are stressed and burnt out and you're sitting there taking it out on people, you've got to take responsibility of that and actually recognize that behavior isn't appropriate and that's not okay. So therefore, you've got to take the accountability and the responsibility to take care of yourself so you stop that behavior. But it's also not the person on the receiving end to take responsibility of that behavior and going, oh, my managers must be really stressed out. They're creating a toxic environment and I just have to put up with it because they're stressed out. No, you don't have to do that. You've got boundaries. You've got to put them in place and actually say your behavior isn't appropriate. Yeah. And I think that's a really hard thing to do. And I think there's this whole conversation. I'm probably going to go off a tangent. I won't, but there's this whole thing about empathy with boundaries, right? You can be empathetic towards somebody, but you've got to create a boundary there and you've got to recognize, although I understand how you're feeling, I'm not responsible for your behavior.
Yeah.
And nor should you be.
Absolutely. And actually, a few weeks ago, we had Ronia Fraser talking about that very thing about boundary setting. So that was really useful. And she was picking up where you were just heading there. Thank you. Sarah, what else is going on? Let's just pick up more on the feed.
Yes, Stuart makes a good point.
Stu.
The challenge of having to do everything yourself as a solopreneur.
Yeah.
You can't just leave. You can't walk out and leave your job if you want the company. So the volume
Yeah.
of work, the pressure, not fully solved
Yeah.
it, but trying to have a mindset of one step at a time and trying to reduce the pressure on himself.
Yeah, not overwork and stuff like that. And then, so yeah, because it's very easy, isn't it, that we just get caught up in work, particularly as solo entrepreneurs. Katie, what say you?
Yeah, the solopreneur thing is so
Mm,
challenging, right?
yeah.
What I always talk to I mean, I talk to everyone about this, but I think it's really important when you're a business owner or a sole
Mm,
business owner and it's only you, is really understanding the relationship between pressure, stress, and burnout. So understanding
ooh,
that pressure can be a really positive thing. You can't work under it 100% of the time. And I think if you work in your own business, you know how amazing you can feel when you work under pressure. You have clarity of
mm.
thought, you feel energized, you feel driven, and that can be quite addictive. However, it's being able to make sure that you don't get addicted to that, because if you live in a world of pressure for too long, you will fall into the traps of stress. When you are a solo business owner, it's really being able to create those boundaries and recognizing. I think there's this whole attitude like your business has to come first. That
Yeah.
makes absolutely no sense. You've got to put yourself first. You've got to put things in place for you to make sure that you can work well under that pressure and be able to take a step back and be able to problem solve. Because if you tip from that pressure into that stress, and it's a really fine line to tip over,
Yeah.
your clarity of thought decreases, your cognitive function decreases, your ability to problem solve decreases, your ability to make decisions decreases. All of that is in there as well. And so a lot of the times it's actually being able to create systems and processes in place for a lot of solopreneurs in, I break it down into 3 pillars, right? Your physical resilience, your mental resilience, and your business resilience, and actually creating processes that sort of work with them in harmony rather than work against. And that is challenging.
Some examples, Katie, just to kind of consolidate those 3 pillars.
Yeah, so I always say, I mean, I always talk about things that you can do on a day-to-day basis. So
Like
what's
that.
one thing that you could do to physically take care of yourself? It could
Yeah.
be as simple as making sure you get enough sleep. Let's
Yeah.
talk about sleep as the great reset. Like, that's going to make you feel amazing. And there is a massive, there's a massive, idea around sacrificing your sleep to be more successful. I would argue that it makes you less successful, but that's my little thing. So
Long term.
asking
Yeah.
yourself, what can I physically do today that's going to build me up physically, mentally, and emotionally, right? So that could be going to the gym, getting enough sleep, eating healthy, making sure you're taking regular breaks throughout the day. Even if it's just 5 minutes to do one thing that you really enjoy that's actually filling your cup and not taking away from your cup, right?
Like that. Fill the cup. Yeah.
Fill the cup. The second part about the resilient mindset, I talk about the 3 steps, right? You've got to acknowledge yourself, you've got to understand where you're at and what actions you need to put in place. And I think that's got to be a consistent idea of acknowledging, where am I at? Where's my stress levels at? Where's my mental well-being at? Understanding, like, where am I at? Acknowledging where you're at. And if you're really at a low place, like, let's say you do that on a scaling system, right? From 0 to 10, 10 being you're amazing, 0 being you're pretty crappy, and you were at a 7 or below,
Yeah.
actually going, okay, I'm 7 or below, what is one thing I could do that's going to make me a little bit closer to a 10, right? So acknowledging that, understanding how you got there and what you need to change, and then taking those actions. A lot of people get stuck at the acknowledgement and maybe the understanding part, but forget to make those really, those really good actions that are going to drive that change. That's really important. And then when we think about your business, I think there's a massive conversation where you have to look at priority. So you have to be able to recognize, instead of working from a place where you're constantly putting out fires, and this is where I work with CEOs, founders, MDs, you all do this. You actually spend probably 80 to 90% of your time putting out fires. So you can't work on your business when you're constantly putting out fires as well. You're working from an urgent standpoint. You're working from a stressed standpoint.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
80 to 90% of your day is working under stress, and you're not actually therefore working on the business where you could probably make changes that is probably going to reduce those putting out fires. And it can be really challenging to flip that, because a lot of the times when you're putting out fires, you think you're doing the right thing. And sometimes actually those fires will burn out by themselves. And I think that's a massive thing.
Those files will burn out for themselves. I love it. There's a great link back to, it was just Steve Covey mentioned this all the time, and a great indicator for you guys listening, as a stress indicator, is how much are you attending to urgent stuff, firefighting, putting out fires. What do we do when the phone rings? We answer it, don't we? But the more we attend to important stuff, the less time we have. Sorry, the more time we devote to urgent stuff, the less time we have to important stuff, as you're saying, Katie. And that's the important thing, isn't it? And that's a great indicator of self-awareness. How much am I spending on emergency stuff and, critical stuff when I should be planning ahead? And if I planned ahead more, I wouldn't have so many fires to put out. They'll put themselves out, right?
And I think there's an element of we mentally put things as critical.
Yeah.
And if you, and the problem is when you're stressed out, you can't think clearly.
You can't think clearly.
So you think that it's critical, whereas when you take a step back, and probably when you're out of that stress, why did I think that was critical? That
Take a
wasn't
step
critical.
back.
That was,
Yeah.
I think there's that sort of element, and it's really understanding what your business actually needs and not what you think you can do. And I think that's a massive difficulty for a lot of business owners, especially solo business owners. I'm in that boat. I get it. It's like sometimes you've got to pick. Bless you. I think sometimes you've got to pick. You've got to pick what you want to focus on, and I think that can be really challenging when you're like, I've got to focus on everything. I've got to focus on marketing. I've got to focus on sales. I've got to focus on my current customers. It's hard. It's hard. It
is hard. You're right, and yet that's a great indicator of self-awareness, isn't it? How much? What is the balance between urgent and important stuff? And I need to get that balance right. And if I'm tipping too much into the urgent bit, then take a step back, says Katie. Take a step back. Let's give you a quick break for a minute. Sarah, what else is going on?
Matthias, one challenge for me was to have too many tasks to do in far too short a time during the working day.
Yeah, classic. Yeah.
So decided to divide his day into intervals using the Pomodoro technique, where I took breaks in between.
Love it. Yeah, short breaks. Yeah. Wow, that's really good.
In between. And interestingly, Anita also says sometimes we need to take a step back to look at the bigger picture. And asking for help is not a failing.
Yep.
Yeah. Asking for help is not a failing. And the other thing that you mentioned before was talking about leaders that aren't taking care of themselves, and then that then comes into the filters down to the employees and about boundaries. Why do most people leave their jobs? It's because the person that's managing them. Yeah, indeed. Okay. So
can I just make
please do.
As, we're talking a lot about managers and burnout and how it affects them, but I think also as employees or people working within companies that maybe aren't a leader, they're just one of the foot soldiers. But it is about recognizing particular health warning signs. It's really interesting, isn't it? We tend to think when there's something wrong, what can I do to fix it, instead of thinking, why have I got this in the first place? And perhaps just being aware of those warning signs that are coming up. And I think it's something we need to teach our young people as they're going into the workplace. Don't just assume that they'll stumble through life as we have. What can we do to prepare them better so that they don't reach these burnout points?
Good point. And Katie gave us that 3 steps, didn't she, Sarah, about sort of self-awareness, understanding, and then taking some appropriate action. And that's the point of stepping back and really understanding what's going on here. And having the self-awareness is the hardest bit of this, I'm guessing, Katie.
Yeah, it can be. Like I'll talk about my journey and how I managed to burn out twice. And the most embarrassing part of that is I do have a double degree in nutrition and physiology. Like I knew, and I still ignored it. So my self-awareness was so low. But I think when it comes down to the self-awareness piece, I think we don't, a really big thing that I say to myself is like, I don't have time. And then I would get sick. I don't have
time. I say that all the time myself.
I don't have time. Like,
don't have time.
To take care of yourself. It's like, that's a ridiculous thing to say. But I mean, at that point, I started off with really, really small health issues that were kind of vague. Like I had, I was kind of what people would probably diagnose with IBS. I was also just getting cold sores more frequently. I was just not feeling great. And, I was 25 and I was like, I'm just getting old. And I'm like, what a joke, I said to myself. I didn't know anything. But I was constantly ignored. But I think the other dilemma is because stress has such a physical impact on our body,
Mm.
we forget it, for one. Like, we know, but we don't know, because we all know stress is the number one killer, but we don't take that into consideration until it's actually really killing somebody or killing ourselves. But I think there's this element that stress does have such a physical impact on our body that we've really got to recognize it. And so, like, I started off just feeling a little bit fatigued. I just had a couple of sore joints. I would get like a really weird infection. I'll
Yeah.
get really weird health issues and then never really think about it. And so what I would end up doing was I would focus on the health issue and not the cause, and not what was causing the health issue. And I'd go to GPs and I'd be like, I'm not digesting food. I'm getting these constant cold sores. I've got these aches in my body. And they would just be like, oh, that's just because of this, take a break. And there was no conversation around, okay, what's going on at work? What's going on in your personal life? Like, are you stressed out? What's going on? I had one doctor ask me, are you stressed out? But this is at the point where I was at the very end, when I'd spent probably around $30,000, just Australian dollars, trying to figure out what was physically wrong with me. And he was just like, oh, I'm just a bit stressed. And I'm like, well, no, crap, I'm stressed. I'm physically unwell all the time. And I'd made that my sole focus rather than I'm not managing stress well. It took me years to figure out that my stress was linked to my physical health. Years.
Yeah. So that's the self-awareness piece. But I think we're getting better at that now, aren't we,
Yes.
Katie? Well, I'm hoping anyway. And we're going to come back to that in a minute. Let me just come up to this poll here we did the other day. So we did this poll to support the build-up to this show. And the question was in the poll, as a business leader, which burnout prevention strategy resonates with you most? Now, with a lot of these polls, it's like all of those things, right? But this was this was the kind of breakdown. So 28% on taking regular short breaks, and Mateus has already come up with that. I think delegating to others, time blocking your calendar. Oh, this is a massive one. I'd love to talk about that in a moment. And cultivating a positive culture so that tips down, into from leaders all the way through the organisation.
I actually think what's really funny in this, so I'm cutting you off, is that delegating to others was so low.
Yeah. Isn't that
For a
interesting?
leader, delegating is so low. And realistically, as a leader, delegating is going to save you from burnout. And it's going to give you the ability to take regular breaks. It's going to give you the ability to block your calendar. And it's also going to cultivate a positive culture.
Yeah, I agree. But I suppose the other thing is, if that was filled out by solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, then they may not be delegating to other, maybe. But then it's about collaborating with others and then delegating in the team to make things happen, right? Because things happen more collaboratively these days, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So I just thought that was really interesting. And this just one little technique there, we're going to come on to some questions in a moment. There's something in the feed that I just want to come to in a minute. But time blocking your calendar, folks, this is such a simple technique. Katie, is that something that you found to be useful? Just sort of, to kind of get space for the important stuff in your life, so you're not constantly just reacting to what's happening right in front of your nose.
Yeah, so time blocking is extremely essential. And we're not just talking about time blocking for work. We're talking about time blocking for family, time blocking for our personal well-being, all that kind of stuff, right? Being spontaneous, like time blocking spontaneity, that's how it goes.
It's true, yeah.
But I think that's really, and it kind of comes back to that spot fire attitude. Time blocking can actually help you prevent that. So like what you can do, because you can time block and go, I need to focus on this kind of priority, which is actually going to probably solve those spot fire things as well. But I actually think time blocking is really, really important, especially when you're really, really busy. It's what I call having a non-negotiable. You have to have non-negotiables, and you've got to have non-negotiables for yourself and for your family, as well as non-negotiables for work. So really being structured to that. I think the dilemma with time blocking is people are like, oh, well, I don't have time to do that today. I'll just do that tomorrow. And it kind of goes out the window. That's what I typically see from leaders that do time blocking.
True. Yeah.
So something that I like to do as well, which can be coupled with time blocking, is what I call the rule of 3.
Okay.
So if you're really busy and you're really stressed out and you have a lot on, I always say to, and they, you have the to-do list of death, right? You take one thing off, you add another thing. It's just never ending. I always talk about the rule of 3, which is look at the 3 things you have to do today that's going to make the biggest impact to your day, and just do those 3 things. What that does is it kind of helps you get rid of all the other noise, because you're only focusing on these 3 things. You time block them, and so what you can, and you time block them reasonably. Like, you don't just time block going, I think this, project's going to take me 30 minutes and realistically it's going to take you 3 hours, right? Be realistic when you do time blocking with the rule of three. But what that does is it kind of taps into that dopamine. So it's going to make you feel really good. It's going to make you feel motivated. You're going to feel accomplished, because if you've got 100 things on your to-do list and you don't finish them in a day, how do you feel? You don't feel great. But if you've accomplished your 3 things that you need to do that's going to make the biggest impact on your day, you're prioritizing in the most appropriate way. Because if you look at a list of 100 things to do and you can only pick 3, you're going to be forced to prioritize. But it also kind of taps into that dopamine, makes you feel accomplished, and you can kind of get into that rhythm. So that's something that I know all my clients find really, really useful.
So pick the first 3, block the time out to do it, to get the dopamine hit. What's the third bit to that, Katie, unless I've missed that?
No, it's the rule of 3 is literally just
the 3 priorities.
3 things. Yeah.
Got it. Right. Thank you. Sorry, a bit slow there. Let's come back to Sarah for a minute. Mrs. Moderator, how are we doing?
Right. Great question from Graham Rose. Kate,
morning,
do
Graham.
you have a definition of what burnout is? Obviously, feelings of energy depletion, increased mental distance from one's job, reduced efficiency are symptoms. But how do you actually describe burnout?
Brilliant question.
Okay, so burnout is essentially, if we just use the dictionary and we look at what burnout is, I will touch on the World Health Organization in a second, and I'm going to go against them if I can.
Of course you can.
The World Health Organization, what we describe as burnout is physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion from prolonged stress. Yeah. So the World Health Organization came out in 2019, at the end of 2019, saying it was a diagnosable syndrome. And that's amazing, because prior to that, you had people like myself going to the doctors going, just stress less, I suppose. The dilemma with the World Health Organization's description for burnout is that they only focus on it's only from workplace stress. And your body doesn't react that way, right? Stress is stress. Your body doesn't go, I'm going to burn out because I've got stress from work, or I'm going to burn out because I've got a sick relative and then or something else is going to happen, right? That's not the way stress works. You just stress, your body goes towards burnout. But I think when I'm looking at burnout, I look at the relationship between the physical health, the mental well-being, and that emotional well-being as well. So it's looking at where did you start from and where are you at right now? So like, what's physically going on for you right now? Are you waking up feeling refreshed? What's your sleep cycle like? Are you falling asleep okay but waking up throughout the night? Are you waking up exhausted but not able to fall asleep? There's so many things to look at just on the physical health side. We can obviously look at like digestive issues. We can look at inflammatory issues and all that kind of stuff. But those really simple things that you can think about. On the emotional side, this is what we would traditionally look at the mental health side. So what behaviors have you got emotionally that might be sticking out? Have you gone from being cool, calm, and collected to being quite aggressive? Or are you somebody that was quite bubbly, outgoing, really engaged, and now you're starting to withdraw from work, from family, from friends, and all that kind of stuff? Like, that's some behavioral things that you can look at. Also, just looking at, for me, the biggest thing was anxiety. I ended up struggling so badly with anxiety. And, I think back in the day, they might have said I had high functioning anxiety, which pretty much meant I could function, but I had anxiety. And I'm like, was I functioning 100%? Probably not. And then when we look at the mental side, I'm looking at more cognitive function. So thinking clearly, do you have brain fog? Are you struggling to remember things? Are you struggling to like focus and concentrate and problem solve and all these kind of things as well? And usually if you've got a handful of each, symptoms in each category, I would say you're on the road to burnout, if not burnout. So and I think the thing is with burnout, what we've got to understand is it impacts every facet of your life. It will impact relationships. It'll impact the way that you work. It will impact how you feel about yourself, how you perceive yourself. There's so many things that burnout does. And I think when it comes to the description of burnout, we've got to be really, really careful, because if we just focus it on a workplace thing, you might take somebody who actually work might be a refuge for them, because maybe there's something ongoing on at home, whether they're in a bad situation, they've got a loved one that's not doing well, and maybe work is a place where they can actually find solace, but they're still burning out.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Interesting.
I answered that person's question. Stuart, I think I answered your question.
Yeah,
I went
I
on a
think.
ramble.
I thought that was great the way you kind of okay. So burnout is about exhaustion from prolonged stress.
Yes.
And who have got a different approach to that. But I like the way you kind of integrated it with it's several things. It's about mental health, it's about physical health, it's about emotional intelligence, emotional health, and looking at the indicators of that, like things like sleep. And just one thing that occurred to me when you said about the physical health side. You know, I remember being stressed at work, thinking, "Oh God, I'm not looking forward to Monday." You know that famous song. I hate Mondays.
Yeah, the Sunday scaries, as I've heard
I-
people call
the
them.
Sunday scares. I used to get those regularly. And it's like, oh, not looking forward to Monday coming along, and the weekend just disappears so fast. Good indicator. And the behaviors, I just think, a great way of self-checking this is to ask a significant other around you, you know, I, because the people that know you well will comment, "Are you all right? Because you're acting and behaving sort of weirdly at the moment." And the classic
Maybe you're
way
a
to,
bit quiet, or
yeah,
you're starting
or
to get angrier.
yeah, and it's not that they're criticizing you. This is the hard bit that I found is, when you get some feedback from loved ones saying that, is that it's not a criticism. It's actually being very helpful because you're not necessarily aware of it. Because the classic thing you might say to answer that is, "No, I'm fine. Leave me alone." And maybe that's a good indicator if you start saying that to your family. "No, leave me alone. I'm fine." When your significant other is just picking up the signs, right?
Or the other one is leave me alone. I'm just stressed because
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
because we've minimized stress, right? That's the other thing.
Mm,
We've normalized, which I think stress should be normalized.
yeah.
However, we can't normalize to the point where we don't manage it.
Yeah.
And I
It's when it
think that's what we've done with society is, well, stress is a part of everyday life. I'm just stressed. I'm just busy. We use all this terminology and we don't then take a step back going, well, how can I get out of stress? How long have I been stressed for, right? Because it's the prolonged stress. I'm not saying you'll never feel stressed, but if your stress is going for days, weeks, months, years, you need to have a conversation with yourself.
You need to have a conversation with yourself. Yeah. And folks, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions as well, just like Graham has done. And thanks for that question, Graham. That was absolutely brilliant. And just a thought for you, Katie, in a world where, we've just been talking about leaders neglecting themselves a little bit, and you've alluded earlier to that while their responsibility is to uplift their teams, what strategies can we use in practice? What do you recommend that we can build up our resilience to burnout? How do we go about that? What things do you recommend? What would be your hot
So,
tips?
okay, so
Mm,
I think the first thing is really understanding that pressure versus stress pressure point. So understanding what you need to understand in yourself what pressure looks like to you, how it feels like to you, and
mm,
understanding when you're about to tip over to stress. So signs, for instance, if you're working well under pressure, you have energy, you've got focus, you've got motivation, you're driven, um you're probably physically feeling really good as well. And on another side note, it actually boosts your immunity. But when we start tipping into stress, it's the complete opposite, right? You feel demotivated, you lack energy, you're lacking concentration, you're lacking focus, and you're probably getting sick more frequently because you're lowering immunity now. So understanding that relationship, so I would say to people, do some reflection and think about what was happening when you were working really, really well under pressure, and then think about what was happening when you started noticing the impacts of actually stepping over into stress. So that would be the first thing. Understand your own pressure performance curve.
yeah.
That's extremely, extremely important. Because what we can do is, if you're working well under pressure, so working well under pressure means that you've got the right amount of pressure on yourself to be able to perform at a high level.
Mm,
When you do that and you get to sort of that real pinnacle point, it's being able to go, okay, amazing, take a step back, then put some really good positive things in place. So, for instance, making sure that you are getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, that's a massive one. Making sure you are doing some type of exercise. Exercise is really interesting because we talk about endorphins, and that makes you
mm,
feel good. What we always forget to talk about with exercise is endorphins actually lower cortisol. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone, which is actually going to then directly impact your physical and mental well-being if you have it for a prolonged period of time. So that's
yeah.
that's another thing. Making sure you're eating healthy as well. When we get busy, what do? We start eating more processed foods, more quick go foods,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
take a step back and actually make sure you're eating whole foods and you're taking care of that, right? That's the physical things that you can do.
ever so easy
Well,
to get rid of that, isn't it? And just think, oh, it'll be fine, you know.
it is. I think, well, no, because what
Mm.
people do is like, I'm too busy this week, I'll do it
Yeah,
next week. And then you
I'll
start creating a bad habit,
gotcha. Yeah, and
right? So you've got
yeah,
to have a non-negotiable where you're going to say, I'm going to do these things, and it's non-negotiable.
yeah.
And that's something that, that's another thing you can do. Write down your non-negotiables. My non-negotiables are, I have to aim to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. I have to do some kind of exercise, whether it's just a walk, whether it's a bit of gym, whatever it is, like fitting that into my schedule. Sometimes I'm really busy and I can't get to the gym like I would normally go. So I might do a 15-minute HIIT session at home just to get something in, or I'll go for a brisk walk or something like that. I also have a non-negotiable where I have to eat healthy 80% of the time, because you know what? I do like pizza, so I will get some pizza, but I
Same
don't
here.
make that my
Everybody loves
norm, right?
pizza. Yeah.
I try to eat a wide variety of fruits and vegetables and all that kind of stuff. So they're some of my non-negotiables. The other thing is, my non-negotiables is, I have to make sure that I know when I start work and when I finish work, and I don't go past that.
Oh, good point. Yes, Katie.
That's
And the
non-negotiable for
weekends,
me.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into it, because you're like, oh, I'll just
Mm,
quickly do this thing, and then you create a habit, right? So you've
yeah.
got to create a list of non-negotiables that fill your cup and not empty your cup.
Love
So
that.
so I tell people, write a list of things that you can do on a day-to-day basis that fills your cup. It could take 5 to 10 minutes, right? Schedule them throughout your day. You have to have non-negotiables.
It's like a checklist.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, love
Um,
that. Yeah.
I also think we talked about it before, but constantly that self-awareness piece, right? So making sure that every single day you're checking in with yourself. Ask yourself,
Mm.
from 0 to 10, how am I doing today, physically, mentally, and emotionally? You can break it down into 3 categories, or you can do an overall scale. If you are below a 7, and I say a 7 or like 7 and below, because usually 8's pretty good, because you're obviously going to have curveballs of life hit you. That's just the way it is.
Of
But if
course.
you're 7 or below, understanding what's one thing I can put in place to make myself feel a little bit better, and having that self-awareness to be going, like, to saying to yourself, like, how am I showing up? How am I feeling about myself? Like, really having that idea. Like, I think if you got into the habit of doing that, it makes more space for you to be empathetic towards other people, and it stops you from
Oh,
going into survival mode, because the minute you get into survival mode, you can't be empathetic, and as a leader, you
yeah.
need to have empathy.
I really love the way you said. Have you got a checklist like that, Katie, that you could distribute to our listeners, for example?
I have a habit tracker where you can put down the habits that you want to track, and I can give that to you.
That would be really useful, and we could pop that in the link later. Because I just think that's a really cool approach. That we'll come on to questions again in a minute. So there's a few more coming in the feed, but I love the idea, folks, of a checklist. Writing down, it's a bit like writing your goals, right? If you don't write your goals, then the likelihood of those succeeding is a lot lower than when you write them. And same thing for what Katie's saying in this checklist. I just love the way you've done that. Where you can write down, what food you promise that you'll eat, and tracking your alcohol, say, for example. We haven't talked
Oh
about that
gosh.
yet, but if you're increasing your alcohol levels to cope at work, then that could be a red flag for you. The promises to yourself, protecting family time, Katie said, and remember that track, that sort of 3-pronged triangle that Katie talked about earlier, about physical health, mental health, and emotional health. Where are you on that scale? And creating your own checklist, and that is such an important question there, Katie. How do you feel about yourself? Let's bring in Sarah for a minute. Just on that checklist, Sarah, what are your thoughts? It just resonates with me.
Massively. And I think, there's a lot going through my mind about our girls.
Yeah.
They're just starting out in life. And the digestion issues, the physical issues, you go, oh, kids, you need to listen to this.
Yeah, because Katie's talking exactly what our girls are going through, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've answered. I was going to say, it's all very well sort of saying, this is the symptoms of burnout. If you are there, what do you need to start doing?
What do you do?
You talked about that, and the self-awareness is massive, because I just don't think necessarily you see it. Anita said, would you recommend an unwind from work routine?
Yes.
They place
Is that a glass of wine?
Not necessarily.
Yes. So, especially because more and more people are working from home, right? This is a massive, massive thing. So, we're not having that unwind when we're, catching the train home or whatever it is, or catching public transport. We're at home now, so there's that
the long drive
barrier. And especially if you're a solopreneur and you work from home solely, and if you're like me, my office is in my lounge room right now. So how do you break it off? I do think you need to have a routine, and every single person's routine can be really different. In summer, mine and my fiance's is to, at a certain time, I think it's 5:30, we stop, put down tools, and we go for a walk. That's a non-negotiable. That's just for us to switch off, to make sure that we're, quieting our minds down. And that's what we do. That's non-negotiable for us. In winter, it's a bit hard because, it's dark outside. However, we did purchase these chest lamps where we can go out now in the dark, which is nice. So we still do that. But some of my clients, it's immediately having a shower. Yeah. Some of my clients, I'm going to have a quick shower, or I'm going to go and listen to this podcast. Like, whatever you need.
Brilliant. Go out for exercise, walk. Yeah. Even if it's dark. Yeah.
Do something. Just create whatever your routine is. It doesn't matter what it is. Just something for you to switch off from work mode into like home mode. And how many of us, can be sitting with family and all we can see their mouths moving, but all we're thinking about is okay, what do I got to do for work? Did I send that email? Like, what's going on? But we need to sort of get out of that routine. And I think there's that mindfulness, like doing some type of meditation. I have a really different way that I view meditation. For me personally, because I don't remember a time where I didn't have anxiety. It got really bad during my burnout, but I've always been quite an anxious person. Looking for solutions is important there, but I actually use meditation to create space for those voices that I've probably gone like put it to the side. But instead I give myself, 20 minutes or whatever it is to actually make space for those voices and actually start recognizing that's a bit BS, that thought. That's not a great idea. We're going to pop that to the side. So it's not engaging in them. It's just sort of looking at it like a third person. And that was something that was extremely helpful, because what would happen is I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about that. I would make myself so busy at work because I didn't want to have these like negative thoughts in my head. So then what would happen is I'd go to bed, and then my mind would start quieting down. I was like, oh, now she has time to think of all these other things that we were wanting her to think about throughout the day. And it really impacted my sleep. Yeah. And so for me, creating the space to listen to my thoughts without having to action them or to buy into them or to judge them, it was just kind of like getting an idea. And what that was able to do as well was, I had this really bad negative voice in my head a lot. It actually helped me call BS on those thoughts. I was like, that's a bit of BS. Like, that's not true. Like, that's not a fact there at all. So I was able to get more like understanding my brain was giving me information for me to buy, and I didn't have to buy it. That was very powerful for me.
Those auto responses. So I think what you're saying there, Katie, just putting some language on that would work for me, is that, is reviewing your autopilot, isn't it? Because your autopilot can quite often work on your insecurities and your fears and the things that your dysfunctions, where actually when you review yourself in meditation like you're doing, you do a self-review and you create the space, as Katie says, to do that, then you can call BS out on some of the things that your mind tells you, which aren't true, right? And it's just having that third person stand backness to do that, says Katie, which is fascinating. There's another question. Do you want to pick this question up, Sarah, that's gone in the feed?
Rebecca's, Rebecca says
Morning,
it's
Rebecca.
a great idea to do a check-in each day.
Yeah.
Bringing self-awareness to the day. We're learning a lot about our microbiome and its importance on our health. Do you have any insights on that, Katie?
Nice one.
That's Thanks, Rebecca. Funny question, Rebecca, because I actually started my career as a gut health specialist when I was a nutritionist. So yes, I do have some insights on that. A really big piece, a really big piece of my work is actually talking about our relationship between stress and gut health. Yeah. And when we start breaking down the microbiome and we think about our gut as a second brain, because that's what we're talking about, right? So our brain and our guts do talk.
Don't they just?
And the microbiome is so incredibly important. And when we think about the microbiome, it's not just the food that we're eating that's impacting our microbiome. It's actually our digestion when under stress, right? So if we take stress as an example, when we're under stress, our body will dictate what's important and what's not important. So if we are under stress for a prolonged period of time, and our body thinks that, we think it thinks it's in the fight or flight response, you don't really need to be digesting that food. If we go back to the hunter-gatherer example, if you see a lion, your body isn't going to go, we don't want that sort of cognitive thing as, oh, is this going to kill me, whatever. No, we're going to have an automatic response to run away, and our body's going to completely shift physiologically, right? So our blood flow will go away from our digestive tract to our arms and legs to give us the energy to run away. We don't need to be digesting that food. And so the reason why we're seeing a huge amount of gut health issues that have spiked, especially in the last 50 years, yes, we can look at our way of producing food and all that kind of stuff, but I would actually more look at diet. I would look at stress. I would look at, are we creating enough time to eat our food? Like, how many times do you eat when you're on the run, or when you are eating at your desk, or when you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, right? You're not digesting food. This is having a huge impact on the microbiome, because when we think about the microbiome, we can think about good bacteria and bad bacteria. The illusion is there's no real such thing as bad bacteria. What that means is that we've actually had an overgrowth of a certain bacteria in our gut that's going to have detrimental impacts on our health.
Right.
So what we need to be able to do, we need to balance that out. So we need to increase our digestion. I mean, the amount of people have come to me with, like, I honestly would say that 90% of people out there I would say probably 100% of people either know somebody or themselves is struggling with a gut health issue, whether it's IBS, allergies, intolerances, autoimmune diseases like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, things like that. But there is a massive relationship between that. And one of the biggest reasons I now talk mainly about stress is because I was a gut health specialist. And I went through my own gut health journey to the point where I was so allergic to food, it was easier for me to tell you what I could eat and not what I couldn't.
Yeah.
It was so bad. It was practically air. So
practically, yeah. Our girls are going through that, and it's a big thing in our family. So great question, thank you. Listen, Katie, we're going through. We're running out of time. I can't believe it. Oh, it's just amazing how quickly this comes about, isn't it? I'm just going to bounce over to your website, and you've got a call to action as well. This is Katie's website. Go and visit. Just give us your website address.
So I've got two. So this is for the corporate peep. So this is www.gistwellbeing.com.
Yeah.
So this is all for the corporate companies that don't like the word shit. But my other website, but this is where you're going to get all the blog posts. This is where you're going to get a lot of information around one-to-one coaching and all that kind of stuff, and talks and webinars and stuff like that. You can also go to www.getyourshittogether.io. And that is more of that. So what I've done is with Get Your Shit Together is it's turning into a membership site. What I really want to do is I recognized that the people that could get access to me had to be able to afford to do one-to-one coaching with me, or they had to have their company allow me to come and do a talk or a webinar for them, right? So that left a lot of people without access. The other thing is as well, I would go into companies and do these talks, and their employees wanted more information, they wanted more support, but I had nothing for them. So I'm creating this membership. It's actually launching at the end of this month, but you can sign up now.
Great. Perfect timing, eh?
Yeah.
As
so
if by magic.
the whole premise is that every month is going to be a webinar based on topics that we've pre come up with the topics. However, if you're a part of the membership, you'll be able to drive what topics you want us to do. The first one, funny enough, is about gut health. So we're talking about how to not swallow your emotions.
Perfect.
And so the whole idea is that you're going to have the webinar there. We're also going to do weekly coaching. So you can jump on a call, and there's going to be group coaching on there as well. And then it's, there's going to be a community where you can talk about that. That's the starting point. And at the moment, what we've launched it as a £9 per month for people at the moment, but that's only for the first 100 people.
Brilliant. First 100 people, folks. And the website again, Katie, just so that we can get that.
www.getyourshittogether.io.
There you go, folks. Brilliant. Thank you. And just a quick shout out from our side, because we're running out of time really quickly. I'm just going to come to Sarah for our call to action very quickly for Leaders Live.
Yeah, just a reminder, if there's things that you want to talk about, please get in touch and we'll see what we can do. It's really, the topics we cover are so diverse, but they affect us all. So again, if you've enjoyed listening to this, let's see who else can you tell about this that would enjoy it and benefit from it.
Thank you. Yeah, and it is a massive subject, and we're not shy of doing this topic. And we've covered it lots of times. This is the third time Katie's been on talking about burnout and stress and all of those things. So it's absolutely brilliant to have Katie talking to us. We've got the expert with us. Goose for next week, folks, is we're going to be talking to Steve Wright again. Steve Wright, not Radio 2 Steve Wright, but Steve Wright, founder of Idolize, a new company that Steve set up with him and his wife, Alex, capturing dreams from idea spark to business startup. And we can't wait for that. So we're kind of just talking about, how an idea becomes a business from a professional photography and how that then created a brand new company for Steve and his wife Alex called Idolize, and how that came about and how he's doing with that business. So we can't wait to speak to Steve about that next week, and be there or be square, I would say, folks. And that's just about it for now for us, folks. I'm sorry we've run out of time once again, and we like to finish on the hour as we always do. So it's been great to hang out with you guys today. Let me just bring up the next scene. Great to hang out with you guys again today online, and thanks very much for being part of this awesome show and this great community we've got here. We'll be on podcast out shortly for Katie's stuff, so look out for the podcast. And in the meantime, that's a wrap, folks. So from our hangout guest, Katie, thanks again, Katie, for being a wonderful hangout guest. You're awesome lady. You.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I love it when people say thank you for having me. This is great. Yeah, you're very welcome. And Mrs. Moderator and me, that was this week's team with our sponsors, Healthy Mind Club. We wish you a great week ahead. That's all for now, folks. We'll see you again next week. And in the meantime, God bless. And may God's love shine on you all. Ta-ra a bit. We'll wave goodbye to our closer. Cheers for now. Cheers, everybody. Thanks again, Katie. You're a superstar.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Anytime. Brilliant. Ah, great. It's great to see all the love coming in the comments while we're going along. So thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Kieran. Brilliant. Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Graham Cormack, for joining in as well. And all the rest of you lovely people. And Anita, etc., etc. Thank you very much. That's a wrap. See you again. Cheers now. Bye-bye.